All right, hello YouTube. I'm finally back with a new update. Um, so I have a lot to talk about in today's video, but first let's talk about the thumbnail. And let me pull up what I have as usual. Um, and if you like today's video, whether you are new here or you've been with me for a while, and if you have been with me for a while and you like what I'm doing here on this channel but haven't yet subscribed, then please take the time to like today's video, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you will be notified when I have new videos go up. So yeah, so let me talk. So let me bring up what I have here. Um, Oops. Let me bring up what I have here. And this comes from investors.com, but it says Warner Brothers warming to Netflix's offer, report says. Now, Warner Brothers, now there are three companies right now looking to buy or, there are three companies right now interested in buying Warner Brothers: Netflix, uh, Paramount Skydance, and Universal, which is obviously owned by Comcast. So, so Netflix has apparently Netflix has apparently submitted an all cash offer to Warner Brothers. Now, a lot of people are saying that Warner Brothers, that Netflix buying Warner Brothers would be a bad idea. And, and obviously a lot of people think this because Netflix doesn't do things, like physical media, theatrical releases. If they bought Warner Brothers, they would have to buy I'm sorry, they would have to do theatrical releases. In fact, there are actually talks of Netflix, bringing some of their movies to theaters. So, you know, so and so there's no way in hell that Netflix, could continue um not to do, theatrical releases if they were to buy, the movie division of Warner Brothers. It's part of uh you can't have one without the other. So, but and it turns out that Paramount Skydance is actually looking to buy everything. They are looking to buy, Warner Brothers as a whole. So not just their movie division, but also, everything as a whole. Now, if Paramount Skydance were to buy, Warner Brothers, they would get, not just DC, but also like Harry Potter, Universal Monsters, um, Lord of the Rings, everything. They would own, Warner Brothers as a whole. So, um, but it says here, the Warner Brothers Discovery board currently prefers the offer from Netflix over um over of the competing bids from Paramount, Skydance, and Comcast. According to New York Post reporter Charles Gasparino, I think is how you pronounce that. Um, Netflix bid is mostly a cash offer for Warner Brothers Discovery and streaming businesses. The board is warming up to Netflix's offer uh because it sees the streamer as the best steward of the assets. Gasparino wrote in a post on X Tuesday. Um, and he He added there was chemistry between Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav and Netflix CEO Ted Sarandos. Um, Now, let's talk about what the benefits would be if Netflix were to buy, if Netflix were to buy Warner Brothers. Now, obviously, Netflix obviously has the money to spend. They don't have, all the debt, that some of these other companies have. And, and Netflix buying Warner Brothers it would do a couple of things. Number one, it would stabilize their stocks. It would stabilize, Warner Brothers stocks, number one. But number two, it would pretty much guarantee a restoration of the Snyderverse because Zack Snyder has a very, very good relationship with Netflix. And you have some of the Snyder actors, like Jason Momoa, Gal Gadot. You have some of the Snyder actors who have already worked with Netflix on on projects. So and Zack Snyder himself was actually asked, if Netflix, acquired the rights, would you come back and, to do, Justice League 2 and 3? And Snyder said, absolutely. So there is, there is a very, very strong possibility there. The other thing that I have been hearing is this deal is they are looking to close this deal supposedly by Christmas or, before Christmas. I think it's either before Christmas or by Christmas. I forget which. But and then here we have all three suitors, Netflix, Comcast, Universal. I mean, Netflix, Comcast, Paramount, sorry. All three suitors, Netflix, Comcast, Paramount, submitted their second rounds of bids on Monday. Now, we know that Paramount is looking to buy everything, as I said. And yep, and here we go. Of the three, Netflix is perhaps in the strongest corporate position due to its robust stock price. And yes, again, Netflix has the money to spend. Strong balance sheet and dominance within streaming streaming industry. So if Netflix, again, if Netflix were to buy Warner Brothers, they would have to do, theatrical releases. You can't buy, Warner Brothers and not do, theatrical releases. You just can't. That's part of the deal. So, and we also know, yep, in a letter to the Warner Brothers board in October, Paramount CEO David Ellison said other bidders would need to overcome significant significant hurdles given their dominant market positions. Um, yeah, and Ellison reportedly has close relationships within the government. And yes, unfortunately, he is a Trumper. Now, we know that Trump really wants Paramount to get it, to get, Warner Brothers. Um, Me personally, I don't really care who gets, Warner Brothers Discovery. I just want to see the Snyderverse restored. I just want to see, Zach's vision, finished once and for all. I want to see, Justice League 2 and 3. I want to see, David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I want to see, the Batfleck movie. I want to see these projects. As a fan, I want to see, this, as a fan, I want to see this universe, finished once and for all. And we also know, and switching topics for a minute, I grabbed, while on the topic of Batman related things, this was something else that I grabbed. This was something else that I grabbed. And this comes from the Hollywood Reporter, but it says Scarlett Johansson in final talks to join the Batman sequel. Now, I am not going to read this article because it doesn't say, it does not say, who she is playing, obviously. So I am going to give you my thoughts on why I think it's going to be, why I think it's going to be this villain and why I think it fits. So we already know that the Batman Part 2 is scheduled to come out October 1st, 2027. And Scarlett Johansson is apparently in final talks again, to join this movie. Now, according to Hollywood insider Jeff Snyder, it is for a villainous role and it is not Poison Ivy. Now, before I get into who I think, the villain is going to be, let me talk about what we already know about the Batman Part 2. So we already know, number one, that the script is already done. Matt Reeves submitted the script already. And we already know that it's going to be a detective story, another, detective story, like the first movie was. And Matt Reeves confirmed that the villain is someone who hasn't really been done before. The villain's been done in the past, and just, a villain that just hasn't really been done, like on a grand scale. Like when you look at villains, like the Joker's been done to death. We already saw Bane. We already saw Bane. We already saw, Scarecrow. And I think what Matt Reeves is trying to do is, he's trying to do the villains, that haven't really been done. Like the Riddler, like we saw the Riddler in, Batman Forever. We saw the Riddler in Batman Forever. So my thoughts as to who the villain could be, me personally, I think it's going to be the Phantasm. I really, really think, and again, this is just me speculating. I have nothing to back this up right now. But given but given what we know about the movie, that it's going to be another detective story, and that it's going to be, a villain that hasn't really been done before. I really think it's going to be the Phantasm, because what, because if it's going to be another detective story, if it's going to be another, like murder mystery, detective story, the Phantasm, and if it's going to be, you know, if it's going to be, a villainous role, and Jeff Snyder confirmed it's not Poison Ivy. If it's going to be a female villain, I think the Phantasm is your best option. And if this is true, then I think this would be an absolutely friggin' brilliant move by Matt Reeves. This would be an absolutely phenomenal choice. Now, I think that I really, really do. I think that this would be a friggin' phenomenal choice. Um, but again, that's just me speculating. We already know that Colin Farrell is coming back as the Penguin. He has a very, very small role, according to him, but he is coming back for the movie. The movie is scheduled to take place, from what I understand, it's still scheduled to take place after the events of the Penguin. I don't know how they're going to make that work with, with the time, uh, with how long it's been, with how long of a gap it was between the first movie and the second movie. But yeah, no, but if this turns out to be the case, then I think, if my theory is correct, and it does end up being the Phantasm, I think this would be a friggin' phenomenal, I think this would be a friggin' phenomenal move by Matt Reeves. Um, Now let's talk about Supergirl. So James Gunn, James, so the movie's budget for Supergirl apparently was reportedly revealed. Okay. And James Gunn said that this is not the case. I know, shocker. But the movie reportedly has a budget of 200 million. And the fact that James Gunn came out and shot this down, and shot this down, saying, it's not true, I think is I think is total bullshit. Not only because James Gunn has an entire, reputation of lying, but also because but also because stuff like budget and marketing isn't even in his wheelhouse. Stuff like marketing and budgets and stuff like that, that stuff goes to Peter Safran. And I'm willing to bet that his contract is already up, because we know that Peter Safran's contract expires this year, and Gunn's contract is up next year. So the fact that he is coming out and saying this, and saying it's not true, when it's not even, in his wheelhouse, tells me that something is going on. That tells me that something isn't right. So now Supergirl, as I've said, hits theaters, July 26th, of next year. And from what I understand, we are supposed to be getting our first trailer at some point very, very soon. It very well could be dropping this month. Again, speculation on my part. But from what I understand, according to reports, we are supposed to be getting our first trailer for Supergirl very, very soon. So, and and I have no hope at all in Supergirl whatsoever. In fact, uh while on the topic of Supergirl, I am going to bring something up that I saw. I'm going to bring something else up that I saw, and this comes from discussing film, and it says here. Now, I'm not going to even try to pronounce this name because I'm just going to butcher it. But the actor who was apparently playing Krem, uh, who is apparently playing now, just as a reminder, this movie, Supergirl, this upcoming Supergirl movie is reportedly based on the Tom King story, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which was actually what Supergirl was originally going to be called, which was originally what the movie was going to be called before they, changed it to, just Supergirl. And but again, I'm not going to even try to pronounce this because I'm just going to butcher it. But the guy playing Krem next year has apparently been sentenced to 6 months in prison, a $4,000 fine, and a 1-year driving ban for driving without a valid license. Now, he is still scheduled. Uh, now, this movie has obviously already wrapped filming. At least I think it wrapped filming. But I don't think I need to remind people what happened, with Ezra Miller, the controversy, that surrounded him, before the movie came out. Before the movie came out, everybody and their mother boycott that movie, after it came out. In fact, and I know I've talked about this in previous videos, but that movie was pulled from theaters uh literally like literally like a week, 2 weeks after it came out because it wasn't making any money. So I will not be at all surprised. Now, I already think, I already, I think it's already safe to say that Supergirl is dead on arrival. It's not going to do well. I'm telling you right now. So with this, now given given that given that this actor's behavior i- w- isn't as extreme as Ezra Miller's was, like Ezra Miller, like his, like if you were following, stuff during that time, we were hearing stuff about him, like every week, every week, like every week, something new would come up about him, and when the movie, and when the Flash came to theaters, nobody watched it. So, and we already know that Supergirl is going through reshoots. I talked about that in a previous video too. So, it's the never ending, vicious cycle of trouble for the DCU. It's not, things are not looking good for this universe. It's just a fact. So, it's just a fact. But, eh, again, it's just a fact. I mean, we'll see what happens. I will be doing a video on my thoughts on the Supergirl trailer, whenever it drops, so keep an eye out for that. But anyway, but for now, I obviously, it's just a wait and see, we'll see what happens. Um, we will see what happens. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think. Are you excited for the Batman Part 2? What do you think of Scarlett Johansson, in final talks to join the Batman Part 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.